East Kalimantan, Borneo, March 19th, 1997. A geologist climbs into a helicopter for what should be a routine flight over the jungle. He never lands. 4 days later, searchers find a body half a mile from the flight path, so badly damaged that identifying it will take days. In his pockets, 4 separate suicide notes. He was the field geologist behind what had just been called the richest gold discovery in history, a find that had turned a penny stock into a $6 billion company and convinced some of the world's largest pension funds to bet on a patch of rainforest most of them couldn't find on a map. Within weeks of his death, that gold would turn out to not exist at all. This is the story of Bre-X and the man who supposedly took its biggest secret with him into the jungle. Except the official story has a problem. Several, actually. Calgary, 1993. David Walsh was a stock promoter running out of chances. His company, Bre-X Minerals, was nearly broke, traded for pennies, propped up mostly by his own optimism. Then a geologist named John Felderhoff brought him a tip. A patch of jungle in East Kalimantan, Indonesia, called Busang, sat on an old, abandoned exploration site. Felderhoff believed it held gold. Walsh bought the rights for next to nothing. Drilling began in 1993. The first results were promising. Then the numbers kept climbing. Every new set of drill cores seemed to find more gold than the last, until geologists were no longer talking about a mine. They were talking about the largest gold deposit ever found anywhere on Earth. The gold rush. By 1996, Bre-X stock had gone from pennies to over $200 a share after splits. The company's market value reached roughly $6 billion, built almost entirely on drill samples from a single remote site that almost no outside expert had independently verified. Canada's largest pension funds bought in. Indonesian officials took notice too. Before the deal was even finalized, a share of the Busang deposit had quietly been carved out for local partners, including companies tied to the president's own family. Notice what was missing from all of this: independent verification. For 3 years, the only people pulling core samples out of the ground at Busang, and the only people testing them, worked for Bre-X. The crack. In 1996, Bre-X brought in Freeport-McMoRan, one of the largest mining companies in the world, as a partner to help develop the site. Freeport did what Bre-X's own geologists apparently never had. It drilled its own holes right next to Bre-X's and sent the samples to its own labs. The results came back in early 1997. Freeport's samples showed almost no gold at all. Not a smaller deposit. Essentially nothing. There was only one explanation that fit. The core samples that had built a $6 billion company were not showing gold because there was gold in the ground. They were showing gold because someone had been adding it, shaving gold dust, possibly from jewelry, into the crushed rock before it ever reached a lab. The fall. On March 19, 1997, as Freeport's findings closed in, Michael de Guzman, the field geologist who had run the day-to-day drilling at Busang for years, boarded a company helicopter to brief Freeport's team in person. He never arrived. 4 days later, a body was found in the jungle below the flight path, badly decomposed and partly consumed by wildlife. In the dead man's pockets, searchers found 4 suicide notes addressed to his wife, his parents, his colleagues, and Bre-X itself, citing hepatitis and a desire to end his suffering. The case was closed almost before it opened. The geologist at the center of the fraud, facing exposure, had jumped from a helicopter. Tragic, but tidy. One man, one motive, one ending. A story that does not hold. Look at the timeline again. In the days immediately before Freeport's results became public, several BREX insiders sold large blocks of stock, including shares held by people close to senior management. Selling early only makes sense if you already know what is coming. That is not the behavior of people blindsided by one geologist's secret. Then there is the salting itself. To fake years of consistently rising assay results across hundreds of drill holes, someone would have needed sustained access to every sample, at every stage, for years. A single field geologist working alone could not have pulled that off without people around him noticing or helping. And the identification of the body raises its own questions. The remains were so decomposed that confirming who they belonged to relied on dental records and personal effects, not a face anyone could simply look at and recognize. De Guzman's own family would later say the details never fully matched the man they knew. None of this proves de Guzman was murdered, or that he is somehow still alive. But it does mean the version of events that closed the case, one disgraced geologist, one fall, one ending, was never the whole story. It was simply the version that let everyone else walk away. Where the money went. BREX's stock collapsed to nothing within weeks, wiping out roughly $3 billion, much of it from pension funds that ordinary people had trusted with their retirements. And then, one by one, the people who could have answered for it stopped being available to answer. David Walsh, the man who started it all, died of a brain aneurysm in the Bahamas in 1998, before any case against him could be resolved. John Felderhoff, the chief geologist, was charged with insider trading in Canada, and in 2007, a decade after the collapse, was acquitted. No one was ever criminally convicted for the fraud at the heart of Busang itself. The Indonesian partners who had quietly been given a stake in the deposit before anyone knew it was worthless never faced public scrutiny either. Within a year, the government that had arranged that stake collapsed for entirely different reasons, and the question of who arranged it and why simply stopped being asked. Consider what that leaves behind. A geologist dead in the jungle, pension funds with a multi-billion-dollar hole, and a list of people in Calgary and in Jakarta who never had to explain what they knew or when they knew it. To this day, geologists still argue about exactly how the Busang samples were salted and whether one man could have done it alone. Michael de Guzman's family has never fully accepted the official account of his death. Maybe he really was the one man who built the lie, and the one man who paid for it. Or maybe he was simply the most convenient person to blame, in a story with far more winners than anyone ever had to name. What do you think really happened in that jungle? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for the next case.